Hello, lovely ones. Debs K here. Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to my little studio this week. Okay, so this week down off to Portugal, we're going to be painting this lovely scene here of the Rio Mondego. Now, I'm sharing with you, this is part of a little mini-series I've got going over on my Patreon channel, and I thought I'd share this, the majority of this one with you over here on YouTube. So, without further ado, let's get painting. Okay, so here you can see I've got my I've gone in with my vine charcoal and given myself, a very scribbly idea of where I'm going. Obviously, you can do this with more simple shapes, but I kind of like to get the feel of the painting with my stick of charcoal as I'm going. But you can certainly make it a lot more simple, if that's your way. And we're going to give that a go next week. So this week we're going to do a really simple underpainting just using one colour family, and I've chosen the red colour family. Now red is a really good colour to put under greens. Often as you know I tend to put several different colours in my underpainting, but I thought let's do a nice simple one where really when you're painting a lot of greens, hopefully you don't go too far wrong, because you're giving yourself a nice complement to those greens as they play off of each other. So using the red family, basically what I've got there, I've chosen myself 5 different values, going from my very darkest red through to the burgundy and mid red, and then a sort of in between light mid red there, and the very palest pink. As I say, chosen this because it's a really good complement to the greens there. Now obviously I've gone on this one I've gone on the pinky side of red, but obviously if you want to go more sort of russety reds, and sort of more orangey reds, that certainly would work in this painting as well. And this week we're working on pastel matte, and I've done a 4x3 format or 3x4 format, basically 9 inches by 12 inches. So basically now you're seeing me use those 5 different values of red. I'm squinting my eyes, looking at my grayscale version of my photographic reference and looking at those main shapes, those main areas of dark, and sort of coming up the value scale there. So I'm going to speed this little section up for a while we get this in, so that I can give you some plenty of real-time footage a little bit later on. All right then, so I'll see you in a mo. So now you're seeing me coming in, and I've got a little pot of alcohol there, and a paintbrush, starting off with my lightest values, and then going darker. Reason I do this is obviously so that those because obviously each time you dip your brush into your alcohol, it will get a little bit grubby because it will have picked up some of that pigment that you put down. So in this instance, it's better off to start with your lighter values first, and then go down the value scale. And so just literally putting those in now and wetting that all down. Obviously, I've chosen alcohol to do this, but you can use water at this stage. Or obviously you can, do a dry underpainting and rub it all in with a piece of dry pipe foam insulation or a sponge or something like that. Really up to you. But I thought I'd like to get these reds set in because I don't want the greens to get too mucky. I've got quite a lot of pastel down there, so I want to set them in. I just found that alcohol was the quickest. I was impatient to get going on this after I'd spent all that time on the underpainting. So I've chosen alcohol. It really only takes a couple of minutes quicker to dry than the water, but so if you haven't got alcohol, don't worry, just use water and you'll be fine on that. It creates a slightly different effect, but we are going to be covering a lot of this with pastel, so you wouldn't notice the difference. So as I say, you can either use alcohol as I'm doing here, or water, or obviously you can rub it in, as I say. Okay, so I'll let you watch me sort of like get all this wetted down, and then we'll see where we are. You will notice as I go along that those darks, that dark red does go a lot darker, once it's actually got some wet on it. And so it does change things up quite a little bit. But we need some good strong darks in there under those trees and in the river and things. Okay, so I'll pop the music back on and I'll see you in a mo. Okay, so as you can see, took my time doing the underpainting, but just those simple values. And as I sort of mentioned earlier, you can obviously group your darker values together and all your lighter ones if you want to keep it even more simple to begin with. Totally up to you. But as you can see, overall, by taking my time, I've really set myself up well to hopefully sort of get a good painting. I've got everything where I want it to be, and I've got those main values in situ there, and obviously using those reds to help me play off of those colours, and they'll vibrate against each other and make it a little bit more interesting underneath. So, talking of colours, let's have a quick look at the colours that I sort of pulled out from my palette initially. Not sure if I used all of these, but this is sort of what got me going. Obviously, you can pause the video if you want to have a good look at those. But as I always say, don't get too het up on colours. Pick the colours out from your own palettes. We've all got different pastels. So, whatever takes your fancy. All right then, so let's carry on. Now the underpainting looks a little bit dark and dismal at the moment, but don't worry, because obviously all those lovely bright colours we've chosen, we're really going to liven things up a little bit now. So I'm going to be doing lots of layers on this one, as I say, sort of painting in my more traditional style, as I do, and starting off with my sky. Now often I would come in and pop my trees and things in first, my darkest values first, but obviously because I've set that, we've set that dark into the paper by putting the alcohol on it, and it's set, so it's not going to move. So it means that I can, and I've got my basic shapes kind of in situ there, really. And I really want this lovely, in Portugal, we used to have these wonderful sort of blue azure skies. They were absolutely clear, crisp and clear. I was sort of like at the foot of the mountains where I lived, and the air was just so beautiful, and just crystal clear and just so smooth. So I want to kind of create that effect, and I want that sort of azure colour. And I'm going to be exaggerating that a little bit in this painting. I want it to be a nice, jolly, happy painting. So we're going to be getting a little bit stronger. But what I did to begin with, started off at the top of my sky, coming in with a couple of different tones of really lovely, rich blue there, as you go sort of towards the heavens, things are cooler, so you tend to get your more purpley blues up there. I don't know whether that's why purple is a spiritual colour, I'm not sure, but it kind of you get those purpley, bluey purple tones up there, and as you come down the sky, things warm up, and you get more sort of aqua tones, sort of warmer blues. And as I say, I'm going to be exaggerating that on this, and we're really going to get some nice strong colour in there. But I'm starting off, and as you can see, I kind of start off at the top with a couple of values, then come up the value scale a little bit. Sorry, I started at the top with a couple of different colours of the same value, and I'm doing exactly the same as I come down the sky. Each kind of section, of that little parfait of the sky, where it's slightly darker at the top and it gets lighter and warmer as it comes down. In each sort of kind of little section, I'm using a couple of different blues in each section. And as you can see, I've got my pastel on the side and changing the direction of my strokes. At this stage, I'm just wanting to get some pastel down there. And I do want the sort of, whilst I'm going to be blending it all in, and I want it really, really smooth, I do want that nice little subtle play of colours going on underneath everything. So my touch is really very, very light. I'm not coming in with a firm horizontal stroke from one side to the other, really. I'm just sort of crisscrossing over and sort of perhaps dragging some colour down, pulling some colour up, and just basically sort of building it up really slowly and gently. But I want to kind of get the sky in the main, really, the main colour. So I don't want to come back up and fiddle with the sky too much. So I'm getting quite a lot of pastel on there, and initially letting the pastels do the blending for themselves, as I say, sort of dragging one colour over the other. Now, I forgot I was on pastel mat, and I thought I was on my Saturday paper, so I came in with my makeup sponge initially to blend that in, but I actually felt that my finger would do a better job. But my touch is very, very light on my finger. I'm not crushing those pastels. I'm kind of just teasing them into each other, and as you can see, just sort of like wafting the colours over each other and just gently blending it. Really want this to be that nice smooth sky there. So I don't want that sort of fractured look to it, which is lovely for some paintings, but for this painting it's more about the river, and as we've chosen the higher format for this week, so it's more about the river and less about the sort of distance, really, less about the sky. But as I say, really want it to be nice and smooth. And as you can sort, whether you notice, then I was just coming down vertically with my finger, little bit of a harder pressure, then pulling that darker down into the lighter colour there. I just really want to get this nice sort of blend. So I go backwards and forwards a couple of times, just sort of merging those colours together. At this stage, I'm coming in with my makeup sponge. just around that, around that headline. I want it to be nice and soft there. That's kind of got to be out of focus in the background. So that's sort of the distant hillside there, just softening that down across the top. But for the most part, I'm kind of pretty happy with the sky kind of colours. I will come back in, but I've got the base of it down. I've got a good lot of pastel down there, and I want to get the rest of my colours in now and just check I'm kind of happy with that. I think I do come back and sort of liven it up some more and things later on in the painting. But for the time being, I've got a good amount on there, and I'm not going to have to fiddle with that sky too much. So the next thing you see me doing, I'm going to be working to start off with from sort of the back, really. And getting in that sort of like the distance, those distant trees at the top of that hillside at the back there. Now, as you can see, I don't go along in a continuous straight line, even though those trees in the photograph, they are quite straightened out. It could look a little bit artificial in the painting. So as you can see, I'm dragging the blue up into the sky a little bit, and as I'm doing so, it's kind of creating shapes of trees and things. I'll come back later and I'll probably drag the sky down a little bit into the tops of those trees. Now I've chosen a sort of like a cool blue at the back in the background there. It's a sort of a greeny blue. It's kind of cross between green and blue, but it's quite cool, and it's fairly muted. It's not too strong in its chroma. What we want to do is, and that will happen later on as well. We want to mute that background down a little bit. The further things away from you are, if you remember, there several different things happen to help us to create that feeling of distance. If we use cooler colours, colours that are more muted, and as I say, cooler in their value, more muted, and obviously we have less detail the further we go back. So I'm really going to be, as time goes on, you'll see me mute that down more and add more colours into that. But for the time being, I'm using that same sort of bluey green here. I'm sort of coming forward in the painting a little bit, and really what I'm doing at this stage is I'm just getting some greens on there, really, and I'm using cooler greens towards the distance, and as we come forward in the painting, I shall be warming things up a little bit. But as I say, just trying to, and now you're seeing me with this is like a very dull, muted sort of muted, greyed out purple here that I'm using now. Softening off some of that red. I want some of the underpainting to show, but not too much. I don't want it to be too predominantly red. I still want it to feel fairly natural, but just adding that letting some of the red peek through. And obviously, touch is very, very light. But as I say, using that nice sort of greyed out purple there for the darker areas of those trees. And what you're going to see me doing is coming, forward in the painting, and sort of whilst anywhere I can kind of see that colour, I'm popping it in there. And as you can see, it's just starting to break up that red a little bit. So I'll mix between colours, but in general, I'm sort of using, getting my darkest areas in first and the distant areas in first. As I say, using cooler colours in the distance, and we'll warm up as we come through. So I'll let you sort of like watch this, these sort of me putting in the backdrop here. I'm going to speed this video up a little bit now, because obviously, we're going to have a couple of versions of this, and maybe even three, I don't know, but we're going to have a couple of different versions. So and this is in my more traditional method, and obviously I build up things very softly and gently and slowly. So my touch is very, very light as I'm going round, but I'm going to speed it up just that little bit more, so you can see as I'm going what I'm doing. So hopefully it'll be clear enough for you. All right then, so I'm going to pop some music on, and I'll see you in a mo. So those distant trees, they're starting to get a little bit of colour on. Look a little bit more like trees rather than red mucky blobs. And as you can see now, starting to come through, starting to pull out some of, looking at my reference photos, starting to see where that light is hitting, these trees in the foreground a little bit. And I'm starting to warm up my greens now, getting a little bit warmer as we're coming forward. And looking at the shapes, within those trees. And as you can see, touch really, really light and just kind of scumbling those pastels over each other. Just gently, again, as I did in the sky, just gently teasing them. Trying not to, trying to, again, vary my strokes in different directions depending on where I am, so that we're getting this nice kind of motley effect really going on. So that's what I'm doing. And obviously, I added a couple of more colours into that distant hillside there. Again, came up the value scale a little bit for underneath the trees, using a lilac, and then also a nice pale green, slight little bit of grey in it, not too strong in chroma, but a little bit lighter in value. And really, that's what I'm doing at the moment. Is I'm really sort of kind of going backwards and forwards to towards the back there to start off with. I'm just trying to find my colour balance as to what I want to put down. As with me, I tend to sort of pull out the colours I think I'm going to need, and then I kind of work it out as I go along. But obviously, if I wanted to be a little bit more direct about it, I could easily just definitely choose some colours and maybe even do a little colour study. It's really up to you. But because I work in lots of soft light layers, I don't worry particularly about getting muddy, because I very rarely get muddy because my touch is so light. But do be a bit careful when you are mixing warms and cools together. Be a bit careful with your touch not being too heavy, because you could end up sort of with smeary mud. So if you want this sort of like nice soft motley effect that I'm sort of getting here, keep your touch very, very light and change the direction of your strokes. So you've been seeing me now coming down a little bit into those shadow areas. Started off with a nice deep dark green in the river and underneath those trees to the left hand side there. And now you can see me with this lovely rich purple in my hand. I've just swapped back to the green, but I did have a lovely rich purple in my hand. And basically, going around adding a little bit of purple. Obviously, purple is cooler in its colour because it's more towards the blue side. However, bear in mind, obviously, in shadows and things, that's not getting the sunlight. So the light in there, the light that you are getting, even in those darks, you are getting some mixture of lights in there. So you don't want solid bands, but your colours are always going to be slightly cooler underneath because you aren't getting that sort of the sunshine through to those shadow areas. So they're cooler. So that's what I wanted to get, some of that nice rich purple, and obviously going through and underneath your rocks and things, getting your lines under your rocks. That purple is a schminky, and it's got a lovely sharp edge in. So, I use that to sort of come underneath the rocks to define the base of those. So I'll let you watch me sort of come forward in the painting, as I say, adding the warmth, to where the sunshine's hitting those trees and things, and just going backwards and forwards, as I say, always just trying to find my balance. All right then, so I'll pop the music back on for a while, and I'll see you in a mo. So as you can see, the pastel's really starting to build up on the paper, and things are getting softer and just sort of merging together, and you're getting. I'm loving that sort of combination of colours that I'm getting, whether you're sort of dragging one pastel over the other. And now you can see me coming in with my super darks. I've got a couple of really super darks, the infamous Terry Ludwig eggplant, and I've also got a really deep dark Sennelier, a deep dark green. Now I'm putting that in I'm just pulling that in the really, really darkest areas I can see. For example, the riverbank. In places underneath those trees, the shadowing's really dark and things like that. So just going through the places that I can see that it's its absolute darkest. But be very careful when you're using these super rich darks, because if you put it everywhere, it's kind of everywhere and nowhere, if you know what I mean. So be a bit careful with them, because you don't want to end up too dark. We want this a nice lively painting, but your darks do set off everything else. So you need them, but take care, have a very, very light touch, and make sure you're really looking as to where those darkest areas are. All right then, so I'll pop the music back on and I'll see you in a mo. So as you can see, we're mainly working, sort of towards the background there. We're still working on those trees and the shadows and things like that. To put a little bit of colour in these foreground grasses here, just again to find my light balance. And that's it, just finding it now. And then you saw me coming in, putting a little bit more of that dark green in the river, sort of now starting to come down into sort of like this lower section of the painting here. So starting to work on my reflections, and starting to work on these bank of trees over to the right hand side here. Now over to the right hand side here, this bank of trees that's at the front here. Now whilst they're sort of like towards the foreground, and normally as I always say, you want your colours slightly warmer if you can towards the foreground. That particular type of tree, and I don't know what it is, it's everywhere in Portugal. But they've got more bluey silvery leaves, so I'm going to want to I mess around for a little bit with my colours here, and sort of I then decide, no, I'm going to pop off into another area. I start to put some down, I think, no, that's not quite right, so I sort of like I think no and I go backwards and forwards, and there we are. Now I think this is now the colour I think I'm going to use. You see, it's got more. It's just sort of more of a silvery blue almost, and that's what I want to use in that foreground tree. So that's it. Again, just choosing my colours and accordingly, because obviously you've got distance and foreground and warms and cools there, but you've also got warms and cools within your trees. We've got a variety of trees here, most of which I don't know. I mean, the big one that's sticking up to the right hand side, I know that's a eucalyptus. You've got a real variety of trees in there, and you've got a variety of colours, that's it. Look at your colours and look at what's actually going on there. This tree, this tree bank to the right hand side did cause me a few problems. I did go backwards and forwards quite a few times with it, and in the end, I still think I got it a little bit light in value. But I was happy enough. So as I say, we're now working sort of like in the river now, getting some green going on underneath there, because obviously that's reflecting all that green of the foliage, so I want to get some of that in there. As I mentioned earlier, I want this to be really nice and vibrant and a little bit of an extra colour, so I'm going to be putting obviously some of those sky colours down in the river, but initially working on the sort of more muted colours that are going on, again looking at where those reflections are coming down. Now, initially, I always start with reflections. Obviously, in order to give the feeling of reflections, you want to be dragging your pastels down. But whilst I'm building up these sort of like initial layers, I'm using horizontal strokes, because if you look at your reference photo, you've got those horizontal bands as well as the sort of the effect of the reflection sort of smearing down. So initially, you see me starting off with horizontal strokes, and as I go on, you'll see me using more vertical strokes, and also dragging the pastels vertically, but I usually start off with the horizontal so that they're kind of there. I want to be breaking up this very lower part of the river, because if you look at it, it's quite shallow there. And you are seeing that those sort of mix of colours going on. You're seeing those sort of russety tones in there coming through from the rocks underneath the river and things. As I say, fairly shallow at that point of the river. So you're seeing what's going on. So again, breaking it up with different sort of different colours, keeping in the blues and greens, and also sort of purples in there. Again, be careful, because green and purple, if you mix them, if they get, you're going to end up a little bit muddy if you're not careful. But you kind of want it a bit muted down in the river, because it's reflections and things. So you kind of want a little bit of mud, but without it looking like a mud river rather than a beautiful crisp clear river. But you do see what's going on there. So you do have those mixtures of colours there. And as you can see now, just starting to add a little bit of light using that lovely sort of lilac-y colour that I had up in my sky there. Starting to add some light into that river. So you're going to see me working on this for a little bit, and I'll let you watch this, and I'll see you in a mo. right, so as you can see, looking again, starting to add the light here. Now, at this kind of stage, I'm a little concerned that I'm going too light in these values. So really what I want to do is get some more colour going on around it and sort of, I want to get those rocks, because the rocks are the lightest value in the painting. So I'm going to be working for a little bit on the rocks, and then that's going to help me find my balance elsewhere. So getting those in situ. So I'm using a variety of sort of pinkies, greys, and sort of muted out colours here now. Again, looking at where the sort of like light is hitting those rocks, where they are lighter and where they are darker. Obviously you've got the sort of colouring of the rocks and things, and also where the light's hitting it. So I spend a little bit of time just sort of finding my balance, finding my way around them, and sort of getting the shape but really just sort of like looking at where the values change in them, and probably spending a little bit too much time on them perhaps, but they are quite focal to the picture, and obviously those ones in the foreground, they are to the foreground, so you're seeing a little bit more detail on those. So for example, there I'm coming in with a bit of russet, because I can see that in the rocks. I don't just want them to be a solid band of colour, a single colour. I want that variation going on in them too. So using a little bit of that russety colour in there, then coming back in with a lighter grey and things, and basically, as I do everywhere really, just going backwards and forwards. And you can see me there coming in now. That's actually a little piece of vine charcoal. Now, vine charcoal is really helpful when you're working on anything in sort of like a muted colour range. For example, these sort of buffy grey rocks and things. And you just want to sort of soften something down, but have it just that little bit darker without having too much pigment in. You just kind of just want to darken what's there. I find using vine charcoal actually really helpful for those sort of shadowy areas of rocks and places like that. It really does help, because I'm not quite sure what it is about it. Maybe it's because it's not pigment as such. It's burnt wood, and it's just a little bit softer. And it just I find it really helpful. As I say, when you're working on rocks and things like that, it's really helpful to sort of darken down some of those areas that you want to. So as I say, going around with a mixture of greys and sort of muted neutral colours really there, and just sort of starting to pick out the detail and starting to make them feel a little bit more rock-like, I guess. And as I say, I want to get those down because they're my lightest colours. So I want to get those down before I go back into the painting to sort of like really set my colours in place. Need to get those in there now to get my balance. All right then, so I'll let you watch me go through the rocks in a bit, and I'll see you in a mo. Okay, so feeling much happier now. Got the bases of those rocks in. And as you can see, you know, it's a question of going backwards and forwards. And obviously as well, cutting in, sometimes coming in with my dark value underneath to define the shapes, or, you know, cutting around using negative space around to create the rocks. But overall, you know, feeling better because that's now, you know, as I say, pretty much my lightest values in there. And that's really going to help me now and sort of like inform me now where I need to go. So now I want to come down into the reflections. Love doing reflections. I love all the mixtures of colours that go on and the way it's sort of like, you know, they mute to each other and just sort of like glide into each other, and you get that lovely watery feel. So the first thing I'm doing is coming in with that lovely rich dark purple. I'd like to get some of that going on there. And as I mentioned, you know, I really want this to feel nice and vibrant and jolly and happy. So exaggerating the colours a little bit, which will make me go back up into the sky a little bit later. But as I say, want to get the river in first. So using this lovely purple. Obviously your reflections, they are, you know, they are reflecting whatever's above them. But as I mentioned when we did the underpainting, usually your reflections are slightly darker than what they are actually reflecting. So always bear that in mind. But you're going to see me now, sometimes I'm using the horizontal strokes, and sometimes you'll now see me using a vertical stroke and sort of dragging that pastel down. Every now and again, as you can see me there now, going in with my darkest darks to establish the bank, and again, you know, looking at where the really darkest areas are. And basically going backwards and forwards between the colours, and I'll do a little bit of blending here, you know. But in general, it's going to be with my fingers rather than anything else. But again, you know, as with the trees and things, you know, sort of finding my balance and finding those colours within the river. But using different strokes in the river. I'm not using sort of mottly strokes as such, more either horizontal or vertical strokes. You know, and as you can see there now, horizontal under the bank, you know, defining that bank with that darkest value in there, getting that back in there, because obviously every time you put down something, it always changes, and it always depends what it's next to as to how dark or how light something is. You know, it really is really depends. A, on the colour, and B, what it's sitting next to as to how it appears. So sometimes you do find it is that sort of push me, pull you, finding your balance and finding how dark something needs to be. But be careful, as I say, always be careful with your very, very darkest darks. As I say, you know, everywhere and nowhere, you want them to define those bits. But as you can see, coming in with some of that green now, using my finger just to soften those colours down. What I do is, you know, I'm still blending at this stage, but this is as up in the sky, very, very soft and gentle. But using at the moment that horizontal, you know, the horizontal marks, now coming back and starting to use vertical. So it's always a constant going backwards and forwards, you know, sort of blending a little bit, then putting fresh pastel on the top. Obviously the pastel that ends up on the very top, you know, I try my hardest not to touch that. But these underneath layers, I am blending. I am using my fingers to encourage them to go in the direction that I want. And when you're coming down with the reflections, as I say, you want to be coming down vertically at some stage, but you want to make sure that you've got those horizontals in place as well, or that, you know, those angles. In this case, it's sort of like angling up, you know, sort of towards about 10:30ish. I learned a tip the other day about angles. Somebody suggested that I think of it as a clock, and I thought actually that's a really good idea. You know, maybe it'll actually get into my brain. So thank you very much for suggesting that. So yeah, sort of like the angle sort of going up into the river. So you're saying maybe 10:30 in the morning. So you know, always bearing in mind the flow of the water, and the shapes it's creating and what it's reflecting. You know, obviously the shapes underneath should be reflecting what's going on top, both in their shape and also in their colour. But as I say, always slightly darker in the river because of what's going on underneath it. But I'm pretty happy with the colours as they're coming together. Obviously I need to do some loads of refining and things like that, but really enjoying these colours, and it's given me that nice happy feeling that I was looking for. So I hope you're enjoying the video. I hope you're sort of learning something along the way, and even having a little paint along. Obviously you can pause the speeded up version, or obviously if you want to sort of like see the full length version of this, where we go through our sort of value studies and the compositional choices I made and things like that. That's over on Patreon. So please, it would be lovely to see you over there if you fancy coming and joining us. But if not, please do subscribe to my channel here on YouTube. It really would help me, and it really would help me if if you enjoy it, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel here if you haven't already. Because I have a little bit of a problem because I'm based in France. The algorithms and things that they use here on YouTube. It means that my videos aren't getting seen, particularly in sort of like the States and all you English speaking countries. So it would be really helpful to me if you could share it, or give me a thumbs up, or write a comment. That would be lovely. Okay, so now obviously I've got the base of those colours that I like. Really what I'm going to be doing now is going round, refining, building those layers up some more, just to the level that I feel happy. So we'll whiz through this last bit, and I'll come in at the end, and we'll see how we got on. All right then, I'll see you in a mo. So I'm pretty much at my last final strokes here and really enjoying the way the painting is coming together. So I hope you like the finished painting. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, this is part of a little mini series that I've got going on over on Patreon at the moment. And, we're coming back and we're going to redo this painting over there and do it in a different colour palette and also a slightly different composition. And see the feeling of two different versions of the same painting. And my challenge for myself over there is to do it in half the time that I spent on this one. So for this one, here we are. Here's my finished painting. So I do hope you like it. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for spending some of your time with me. As always, I do appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button or like button or send me a comment or ask me a question. Always very happy to hear from you. So I wish you a lovely few days. I hope you get a chance to do some painting. And if you do, happy painting.